All right. Well, I believe this is all up and running. So this is our second Swimming Science Facebook Live event. I'm here just in the back office at Core Physical Therapy and Training. We are located in Santa Clara, California. We're a very unique facility where we work with a lot of swimmers, helping them out with improving, one, resolving issues if they're having any aches, pains, or injuries preventing them from peak performance. We're also working with athletes getting stronger, getting faster outside of the pool. And we also do team consulting to help them with help programming their training program, perhaps even working with their biomechanics as well. So what I want to do is just once again explain what we're doing for this. So this is just an opportunity to ask any questions. You're welcome to ask any questions in the comments section. I will be answering those questions first. That's in the comments section. Also, I have a few questions that we received from our newsletter. If you're not getting our newsletter, you can sign up to it on our Facebook feed. We send out a lot of great content there. We also are getting our website back up and running. It should be it's pretty close to being live now. You can go to swimmingscience.net and see what it looks like. You're welcome to give us feedback, just info@swimmingscience.net. We are once again working on improving just the overall experience for all you guys, just to help the swimming community get faster, stay healthier, and improve just their enjoyment with the sport. So, okay, let me go ahead and get started with some questions that, once again, that I received here through the newsletter. Okay, so someone asked, one sec, sorry, the formatting of this is a little goofy here. Give me one moment here. Okay, so it looks like this question is asking about the ideal dry land for a master swimmer, how to maximize that. So when we're looking at any dry land protocol, we have to keep in mind the needs of the athlete as well as what they have available to them. I could write a dry land program that is perfect in a bubble, but the world we live in is not a bubble. You have to keep in mind really what time you have available, what equipment you have available first. So those are two assessment points to keep in mind. If you are only swimming 3 times a week and then you want to do maximize swimming performance and you're going to do another hour of dry land, I think swimming a little bit more is going to be the best thing for improving your swimming performance. So we have to really assess what the goals are of the person. If you're looking to be healthier, looking to improve bone mineral density, looking to prevent injury, then that's a little different story. But if your number one goal is maximizing swimming performance and you're only swimming 3 times a week, as many master swimmers are doing, the first thing is going to be try and get to the pool a little bit more. Okay, it's simple as that. Swimming improvements is most improved by swimming. Okay, let's be honest there. However, if you are looking to do a dryland program, I do think a very general program is a good place to start. A lot of people assume that just because you're older, you can do more advanced things, but really trying to improve all the muscle groups, improve all the different planes of motion, so making sure you're not just moving forward, but moving side to side, improving all the things that can help out improve just your general strength is really going to be a great thing to help, one, injury prevention, two, overall muscular imbalances, and then three, improve performance and your ability to learn new skills along the way. I think in an ideal world, you'll be getting assessment from someone so they can take some baseline measures, see if what your on-land limitations are, see if they correlate with your in-water limitations, and then provide a plan for improving those things. So I wish I could give, just a real, general programmings or suggestion there, but obviously we have to keep in mind what really the goals are of the person and then how to improve them. So that's where doing some testing and working with someone in that, it's an expert in that field really can be important. Okay. Another question I had is, okay, what is the best swimming training for weight loss? Okay, so maybe not for the most competitive swimmers, but maybe something that some of you recreational swimmers or adults, once again, are trying to consider. So I think the biggest bang for your buck if you're trying to do weight loss is high-intensity interval training. A lot of good research is showing that if you're doing really high-intensity bouts of exercise, it's going to increase your oxygen intake not only during the exercise but after exercise. And the more oxygen you take, more calories you burn, so on and so forth. So I think doing things like, sets of 10-25s, 100% all out from the start with only 10 seconds of rest is really going to give you a lot of bang for your buck for trying to improve weight loss or improve caloric expenditure. You can obviously mix that up with different strokes and things like that. But really, from my experience, that is what's going to be the best thing for you. Okay, next question that I received. When doing an assessment, what are the most common assessments you use for shoulder pain and assessing someone's risk for shoulder injury? Yeah, so a couple things. I think, once again, no swimmer is alike, so you have to kind of take that in mind. With most of our shoulder assessments, we're starting with just simple range of motion. If they have pain with specific range of motions, that gives us a lot of information already, and that maybe we don't even need to do other tests or anything. We may just be able to use that as our test retest, just simple range of motion, particularly shoulder internal rotation, maybe with a little overpressure. Outside of that, we'll do things like Hawking-Kennedy's, Neer's test, Speed's test, Jurgensen's test, really just the whole gauntlet of orthopedic test if our subjective interview, lines up with something that sounds more like a posterior internal impingement or a labral irritation. So just kind of keep that in mind, really what the athlete is presenting and describing. If it's one of those things, then obviously test those things. If you find something that's positive, if it, sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, it probably is a duck. So you can go ahead and start assessing that and then monitor along the way. We also like to do resisted external rotation tests. I think that's a really good test for assessing posterior internal impingement, one that I don't see other places do as much. And I think that's a big one just because that's the most common thing I see with our swimmers, whether we're talking about, 10, 11, 12-year-old swimmers or master swimmers or Olympic world champions. Okay, so that's really what we like to use at our facility with our assessments. Once again, a lot of these tests, even in healthy shoulders for swimmers, maximal resisted external rotation, they have pain with, or end range shoulder internal rotation with overpressure, they have pain with. So I think these are, warning signs that, they are at a higher risk of injury. So giving them some soft tissue on the posterior cuff, giving them some more strengthening in external rotation, making sure they can activate the external rotators. God, I can't tell you how many times we'll do external rotation and the athletes will do this huge scapular retraction and not even activate the posterior cuff. So we have to make sure that, one, they can activate these things. So just, once again, just because someone's a good swimmer or skilled in the pool doesn't necessarily mean that they can do these things properly. You got to make sure that they can do it. And then, once again, you assess and then you go ahead and work on implementing and improving that. So those are our common shoulder tests. But, like I said, it varies based on the athlete. Okay, next question. What are some risk factors of low back pain in swimming biomechanics? So by the way, shoulder test, drylandforswimmers.com, core swimmer shoulder, some good resources for more information on that. So as far as low back pain for swimmers, I'm working on a book through Ivy Press, which is finishing up here. We have a whole chapter on injury rehabilitation, and low back pain is one of the areas that we focus on. So common issues I see that are going to be contributing to your low back pain while swimming. One, swimming with your chest too high. That's going to be arching your back, putting way too much stress on your lower back, your quadratus lumborum, which is likely overactive already. Hyperundulation on dolphin kicks is another one. Rounding the spine on turns instead of bringing the knees to the chest on turns. There should be contribution from both ends, getting you into that tight ball. Some other things that may help or may increase low back stress: breathing. If you have a forward breather on freestyle, that will likely cause some low back extension, putting more stress there. On breaststroke, if you come up excessively high, or if you do kind of that 2-beat crossover kick, you're likely getting some shearing stress there of the spine, which is really damaging. So we got to make sure that this shearing stress isn't occurring. Once again, if they are kind of, their hips are wiggling side to side, that's going to place a lot of stress on the back. So we have to really make sure all these things, and like I said, a lot of these issues are with extension of the spine. So we want to make sure that, one, they can control that extension. Two, they have the strength to limit that stress and extension in the low back. And then once again, we also have to keep in mind torsion of the spine and how much stress that can cause. So working on those biomechanical things can be very helpful for reducing low back stress. However, just because they have some of these doesn't mean they're going to have low back injury. So we just have to keep in mind, if you are going to try and change the stroke, one, where they end the season, is it worth it? Two, Is this something that's really going to help out with their swimming, or is this going to complicate the system? If we try to make changes just to make changes, we may be after this mythical perfect swimming stroke, which really doesn't exist. I remember when I was working with Sun Yang, and we were doing biomechanical analysis with him, with Dr. G from USA Swimming. There's biomechanical flaws that exist even in world champion, world record holders. So we just have to keep in mind, no stroke is perfect. Why are we trying to change it? And I typically don't change things unless it's, one, going to improve swimming velocity, two, improve something that is already causing pain, or at the very least is showing that someone's a risk factor for something. Okay. All right. Here's a question about strength training. What types of pulling variations do you prefer? How do you program your pull to push ratios? So what this question is about is, pulling something like this. You can have horizontal pulling or pull-ups that are more vertical pulling versus pushing like a bench press or a push-up. So we usually like to do 3-to-1 pull to push ratios. So we find that can help improve the imbalances because swimmer shoulder, swimmer posturing, tight pecs. So working the pecs even more could increase this. Also tight lats here causes internal rotation. So working the scapular stabilizers, the mid traps, the lower traps can really help this out. So like I said, 3-to-1 pull to push ratio is what we recommend for our overhead athletes, not just swimmers, water polos, synchros. I guess they're wanting someone, FINA wants to change their name, but I'm still going to call them synchronized swimmers, as well as baseball players, volleyball players that we see at our clinic. As far as our favorite variations, I think it depends on, what their level is. God, we have some kids doing some pretty advanced, we call it 1.5 arm pull-ups, where they have one bar on the, vertical bar, one bar up here, and they're, trying to just isolate or use more of their vertical arm as they're pulling up. So working on challenging the athlete is something that's really important, because sometimes you can get stuck with some of these pulling patterns, especially with some of the elite men, in the muscular endurance phase, when we need to work on strength and power and explosiveness. So we got to make sure that we don't just get stuck in that one phase, and that you're finding ways to challenge them, whether it's trying to do more unilateral stuff or trying to add resistance to it. So just one of those things can make it challenging enough to, once again, not get stuck in that muscular endurance. And once again, in the Dryland for Swimmers product, I really go over how, even though there's not a ton of research on strength training for swimmers, a lot of what we're seeing with the research suggests that more the lower volume, more high intensity is what's going to, lead to greater improvements in swimming velocity, which, is the name of the game for most of you people. So we have to keep that in mind. With different pulling variations, obviously inverted rows, horizontal heavy band rows is another great one. So those are, there's tons of ways. Bench rows, bent over rows. Just once again, is this going to be increasing their stress there? And is it something that is going to be safe and obviously carry over as much as possible? So, really just kind of keep this in mind. Like I said, as far as giving specific exercise, there's so many out there that you can do. So figuring out what equipment you have, what time you have. Also, another thing to keep in mind with Dryland, especially as you start working with more elite swimmers, figuring out what their mental state is, what they think is most beneficial. Just because you can have the best program in the world, but I really think psychologically they're not buying in, they're not going to get the results that you want. So you have to keep in mind what exactly they think is the best thing for them. And then obviously, just like in the swimming, you got to help mold their mind, work with them a little bit, and go ahead and get the best out of their performance there. Okay, let me read some of these questions real quick here. So here's one. Can you explain the biomechanics of how swimming places mechanical stress on the shoulder joint? What anatomical structures suffer these stresses? Yeah, so as we're swimming, we get that early vertical forearm. That's what a lot of coaches try to achieve. As we're moving through this position, a couple stressful things occur at the shoulder joint. One, the posterior rotator cuff is being stressed because it's being eccentrically loaded as it's rapidly stretched there. As it's rapidly stretched, it goes through the strong stretch reaction, and the eccentric force can actually increases the amount of stress, or is usually more stressful than a concentric force. So we have to make sure that the athlete can handle that eccentric load, that lengthening of that muscle, because it's going to be stretched and stretched and stretched and stretched, and that can lead to a lot of damage, a lot of, we call it myofascial trigger points back there, and then that can be rubbing and cause some rubbing underneath some of the bones in the shoulder blade, which can, cause the posterior internal impingement, as well as some irritation on the backside of the labrum. So the labrum also can be irritated when you're doing these things. One, if these tight muscles are increasing that joint pressure on the labrum, it can cause some excessive stress and maybe risk for more shoulder irritation there. Also, when you're swimming, the biceps is placed under a lot of load. So the biceps attaches up to the front of the labrum here. So once again, it can cause some issues there in that labrum position. If you're an older swimmer with some tight mid-back, some rounded shoulders, you may also be placed under just primary impingement, which is more impingement in the front of the shoulder, which can occur as you're kind of coming up in this range. So on the recovery backstroke, also the pull through. So those different things can lead to more mechanical stress on the shoulders. And those are some of the structures that are stressed under it. There are other structures around there, bursa. Those can get inflamed, cause irritations. So these are some of the different things that get stressed when swimming. Okay, another question here. Okay. Okay. Someone's asking for just kind of sounds like my favorite shoulder stability exercises. So simple ones, just I call it 3-point scapular traction or Swiss ball Y, scapular retraction, and it's just teaching someone how to squeeze their shoulder blades down and back without raising their shoulders up. I'm sure I can find a video of it here. Or I call it this 3-point robber. Another one I like is the wall slide, where your back's against the wall, your back's flat, your head's against the wall, and you're sliding up and down. That can help improve pec minor limitations as well as build scapular stability strength, posterior cuff strength. I also am a big fan of 3-point Y or Swiss ball Y. Let me just find some of these videos real quick. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way for you to get a couple of these things. And I think one of these videos has me with a pretty great mustache, so hopefully we can provide some entertainment for everyone here as well. Okay, so I'll just write these in the comments. Here's the 3-point Y. This is something I did for Swimming World, where it was kind of talking about how to assess if you really can be decent at butterfly. I think before that, getting into the 3-point robber is a good one, because a lot of swimmers, when they squeeze their shoulders, they still get that upper trap elevation. Let's really focus on getting the shoulder blades down and back. I think learning that skill first really is key. Let's see if we can find the wall slide here. Maybe I have it under wall angel. Give me 1 second. Okay, well, I'll keep looking for that video, guys. Let me ask one of these other questions. What are some basic exercises to incorporate on dryland routine on deck? Med balls, kettlebells that mimic what they want to get out of the weight room, but specific and with our gear. Yeah, there's tons of stuff you can do with body weight things. With just kettlebells and med balls. So that mimics what we want to get out of the weight room. So I think one, even before you get to any of that stuff, can they go through a full push-up progression, regular push-up, single arm elevated push-up, regular single arm push-up? These are tough exercises, especially if you're working with age group or even, high school age swimmers. So really making sure they can do those things appropriately. Then you can progress, because, when we're looking at stuff, we want some pushing exercise, we want a pulling exercise. So if you have pull-up bar, like I was saying, you can do pull-ups, lowering yourself down nice and slow. You can do pull-ups where you're going down on just one arm. You can even try single arm pull-ups. All great exercise to challenge someone. You could also start getting into, if you don't have a pull-up bar, trying to find somewhere where you can be rowing, doing like a bench row with the kettlebells. So maybe you have the benches around, you can work on scapular retraction with some resistance there. After that, with the kettlebells, you can do kettlebell swings, you can do kettlebell squats, you can do kettlebell single limb squats, kettlebell single limb RDLs, You can do Nordic hamstring curls, single leg Nordic hamstring curls. All those things are, with the equipment that you have, and really don't need anything. So I'd say just make sure you're getting in a push, the 3 pulls, okay, some sort of squatting exercise, some sort of hinging exercise, and then make sure you're building up the core just in the multi-planar positions. You can do things like super dog for posterior chain core. You can do hands overhead curl-ups. You can do partner squeezes, all types of stuff with the core. I'd say I'm more a fan of keeping neutral spine with the core, or at least a straight position, but making sure they're doing stuff where they're resisting rotation, they're resisting flexion, they're resisting extension. All those types of things can be done with minimal equipment that you have there. So hopefully that can help out. Okay, but those things can definitely challenge elite swimmers as well. I've worked with some Olympic level athletes that we're doing 20-pound kettlebell squat and we're just working on the right form. So it's just something to keep in mind. You don't have to get crazy sexy with the exercises. Just make sure that they're challenging, make sure they're with the right form, and then go from there. Okay, so got a few more questions coming in. Let me just read them real quick. Okay. Thoughts on CrossFit for dryland, high school age swimmers swimming 6 to 9 times a week? Depends what exactly they're doing, in all honesty. I wrote a piece that CrossFit people didn't like, and it sounded like it was bashing CrossFit, but it was more about the general, just doing a general program for a team and maybe doing things that aren't monitored closely or monitored properly with right form. And that applies really to any dry land, not just CrossFit. So I do think CrossFit can be done if you think that they need greater work capacity, or if you're worried about their ability to tolerate lactate, push themselves. That type of high intensity training can be done. You have to kind of, I think, see what your swimming program is doing, and see if that's really what is necessary, that you think is best for improving their swimming performance. And then after that, it's trying to figure out what's going to be the lowest injury stress exercises to use within the CrossFit programming. Obviously, there's a lot of overhead presses in many programming. There's skipping pull-ups in a lot of the programming. I think those are a little too much stress. Swimmers already have a lot of shoulder stress. Why add any more? But I do think, doing a CrossFit style workout with exercises that are lower stress on the injury, the joints that are already at risk for injury, the shoulder, the low back, can be done perfectly fine, especially if you have a competent CrossFit coach or competent strength coach, or you're a swim coach that really can teach exercise technique well, and then you can, make sure that they're getting the right form, because that's really what it comes down to. And like many dryland or strength coaches will say, there's no wrong exercise, there's just wrong implementation. So make sure that, it's just the exercises are implemented smartly, safely, and done with proper form. So I found that wall slide exercise that I was mentioning earlier, so let me just post that in there. Okay, next question. Any exercises that aren't necessary is like certain ones that don't help with swimming. Depends on, what the limitation is of the swimmer. I think really, in general, a lot of exercises can be helpful and implemented to help out one swimming or just general strength. But clearly there, some aren't worth the risk, I think, in some scenarios. So it's just kind of analyzing where the swimmer's at, what their strength, what their function is, and then, where is this placing stress on their body? So, I don't really, have, okay, here are the no exercises. I think for some people there's no exercises, and there are some common ones that I see, but, unfortunately I don't think I can say these are the never do exercises for a swimmer, okay? Okay, next questions. How, how to help a 10-year-old swim butterfly, any, we have to, they're asking about how can a 10-year-old help out with their butterfly, it sounds like. One, swim butterfly. Best way to improve swimming is to do it, especially at that young of an age. Clearly we don't want to, overdo it, but, making sure that they are, able to breathe properly with their head low. They're able to get that thoracic extension, able to do dolphin kicks appropriately, able to time their kicks with their arm entries properly. All these things are really the best thing. If I were to give some exercises for a 10-year-old, it really depends on what I'm seeing with them. Over time, their maturity should help out with their strength to do it properly. Maybe doing some foam roll across the thoracic spine to help open up the mid-back as well as open the pecs up a little, but hopefully they're not having those issues already. But it's not to say I've never seen it before, so it's something just to kind of keep in mind. But it's hard to give just a general, it's hard to give just general exercises to a 10-year-old without knowing exactly what's going on. Okay, a couple more questions. What are your thoughts on hanging by your arms from the bar, strengthen your shoulders, and get rid of shoulder pain? Assuming this means a vertical bar, so just like a pull-up hang. Not a fan of it. Not to say it can't be done by anyone and it can't feel good, but likely if you're doing that, you're stretching out some of the nerves, which will decrease blood flow to the nerves. Decreased blood flow to the nerves means that it will feel better for the short term, but in the long term, I think it's going to cause some issues. I also think it can increase instability of the shoulder, putting a swimmer at more risk for shoulder injury. So not my suggestion. But like I said, if you're a master swimmer, someone who's limited in shoulder range, things like that, maybe it can be done safely. Once again, depends on the assessment for that swimmer. Okay, let me just read this question real quick. It's a longer one. Okay. Okay. What role do the pec major play in each part of the catch, pull phase, and freestyle? And what about butterfly? Okay, I'll answer this best I can. Pink and a former USC professor, Jacqueline Perry, in my opinion, have done the best EMG research on underwater swimming or just in-water swimming. Unfortunately, the more current research on EMG and muscle activity during swimming hasn't been done with fine wire EMG, so it's more speculation. But the pecs are mainly going to be active, all the way during the initial catch, the catch, and then the pull. Probably some activation on the push phase as well, and I think it's very similar muscular activity pattern during the phases on butterfly, because it's a similar catch motion, at least in most butterfly. Some get this outward press there, and then they get more right into the mid-catch phase. But if you're just getting in, pulling through, getting in that catch, the pecs will be likely active that whole time. Even on the recovery, there'll be some eccentric activation, but I'm assuming we're talking about concentric during that pull-through phase. I might need to review some of that research a little bit more, but that's my understanding from what I've seen. Okay, so time for just a few more questions here. Okay, what drills do you recommend for breath timing and freestyle and butterfly? With freestyle, I like to use mirrors, like to do having them spot and sight at different areas in the pool, just because the main thing we want to make sure they are breathing to the side. Also want to make sure that they're initiating their breath at the right time. So likely, and this can be, as that arm's pulling through and the other arm's coming forward, they're getting to that breath, so their head is moving with their body as a unit during the rotation. I find an unconnected breath oftentimes will lead to that forward head breath and more stress on the shoulder. As far as butterfly, once again, I think the best drills are to teach them, the right, time to breathe. So as they're kind of, just able to time it properly. So talking about timing a butterfly with that breath, versus giving them any specific drills, maybe finding a tempo trainer or giving them other type of cueing. Once again, a mirror may help out. Video camera work underwater can help out, just letting see where maybe they're breathing during the non-productive phases. But those are the things that I find that work out best for making those changes on the breath. Okay, can you give an overview of the importance of getting the fast twitch muscles working, if that's the way to phrase it, to help with speed? In strength training, I think the best way to get fast twitch muscles, they're could be maybe some transfer within the type 2 fibers to be more active, to be the faster twitch muscle fibers. So maybe doing some medicine ball work, some power stuff, some velocity work that might be able to get some of that transition from certain type 2 fibers to the faster type 2 fibers. I think doing more speed work in the water will accomplish that, and that's probably from a young age. So this goes against the a lot of the USA swimming and ASCA mindset of Bob Bowman's philosophy of, you're building that bucket, you're, building your base up as a young kid, but maybe doing more high intensity stuff. Theoretically, that could be why Mr. Michael Andrew had success in these 50-meter events, because, he, wanted, he's a big kid, he's probably got more, a lot of talent already. So, we will never know because there isn't a research study, there's no, way to control all these variables, but maybe he was doing all this high velocity race pace training, and that allowed him to transfer more of his type 2 fibers to more type 2X fibers, which are a little more high velocity, and now he's starting to see that he's building strength, he's getting more mature, he's putting on muscle, and he's got the muscle fiber preferences to be able to do more of the sprint swimming. So those are some things that may help you transfer or utilize those fibers a little bit more. Okay. Okay. One last question. This could be a long discussion. Thoughts on USRPT? I think, it depends on what the goals of the person are, what the goals of the team are. I do think it's a great way to keep interest for the kids. I think it's a great way to improve race pace velocity, whether it's, solely the only type of training someone can do. I'm doubtful on that, just for mental staleness, for injury risk, even though you're doing less volume, and volume's the most commonly correlated thing with shoulder stress. What about if you're doing more higher velocity? Will it be velocity that's more correlated with that? But I do think it can certainly be utilized, and for some athletes, it might be the best programming for them. But once again, doing a needs analysis, doing what's going to be the team philosophy, and then, I think we'll find out over time, because I think enough teams are doing it. We'll see if this has some staying power. But if I were to guess, it's probably going to be a hodgepodge of some different things, and I think the USRPT, some of the principles and some of the sets are being utilized, even though it's not only that type of training, being utilized by a lot of elite coaches, at least part of it, or maybe they've been doing something like it for a while, at least doing part of it. And I know Dr. Rushaw will say that, it's not just the training, there's the mental aspects behind it, there's the technical aspects, and that is certainly true. Those are huge components of something. So, he has his views on how to go about, those as well. I think they're really good, those two aspects. I think the training element is the one that, there's probably, it's going to be a hodgepodge for most athletes to find out what fits best for them. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Once again, if you have any more comments, we can answer them at our next month's one. And we plan on doing one of these once a month. So thanks again. And if you have any questions, info@swimming science. And you guys have a good night.